some terms. We got about 2 slides of terms, and we'll go through them. Now, when we're talking about the actual sampling results, this refers to the results obtained from the sample of an audit population. We're going to see that there's a process, just like this whole audit process, there's a whole process for sampling. That's going to involve assessing what you need to sample. It's going to involve, at the end of it, assessing the results of the sample. We've also got the actual population results, which this is the results obtained from the entire population being audited. We'll talk about the differences there. Again, this relates to us just auditing a sample of the population rather than auditing the entire population itself. We've also got the expected deviation, also known as the expectations for the audit. This is the amount of variation that is expected between the sample results and the actual population results. This is for you to assess your sample and to see, oh, okay, our sample assessed 5% inaccuracy, but in reality, there was 10% inaccuracy. Well, that's not good. And we'll talk about what happens in that case as well. We've also got our tolerable rate. This is the maximum accepted. This is quite similar to the tolerable rate of misstatement. If we're talking about audit risk, we're talking about all of that in that formula, in that lesson. Same concept here. It's the acceptable rate of deviation between the sample results and the actual population results. The actual rate of variance should not exceed this rate to be considered valid. Again, if you are actually varying from the real results, and that's greater than what you're saying is okay to vary, you've got a problem, and you should not be having a variance that's greater than what is allowed. Next up, we've got projected error. That's an estimate of the potential difference between the population's true value and the sample's estimated value based on the sample results. We are actually going to see some calculation-based questions throughout this lesson, more so toward the end. This is calculated by multiplying the sample's absolute error by the sample size. We are projecting, now in real life, a lot of firms are going to use templates for this. You're just going to plug a bunch of numbers into a template, and you're not really going to even see the math that happens behind the scenes. This is going to allow you to essentially utilize IT to understand what may be the results of your sampling. Next up, we got reliability. How reliable is our sampling? This is the degree of accuracy of a sampling method. Here in audit sampling, it's going to be important to ensure that the sampling method is reliable so that the sample is representative of the population and the results can be trusted and are reliable. That's the key, most important thing here. You could have an efficient sample, you could have a clean sample, you could have a sample that's just wonderful, it works perfectly in terms of how it functions, but if it's not representative of the population as a whole, that's a problem. The process of sampling could go great, but if you get a variation of 2% and in reality it's 8%, well, there's no point in sampling there because it just doesn't give you an accurate picture. Ideally, right, you're trying to sample and you take a sample of 10 items in a population and maybe there's 1,000 items and you want to maybe assess that it's 2% error and in the population, maybe it's 3% error. See right there? A lot more close than 5 and 10%. Precision, the degree of detail or exactness of the information. We want to make sure that these have meaningful results. They actually are, again, representative of the population. Our standard deviation, and just like all these things, you may remember these from statistics classes, probably do. A lot of people probably take that in business school. Standard deviation, it's the measure of the spread of the population's value around its mean. Right, so if we're talking about, we've got a line that represents the whole population. Right here, maybe this says 2. This is $2 transactions. This is $8 transactions. Let's say on average we have $5 transactions. Now the standard deviation is essentially saying how far out do we go from the average, right? $5. So maybe most of the a standard deviation could be incredibly low if maybe our population only has $4, $5, and $6 transactions. But we would have a much higher standard deviation if we had $2, $3, $4, $6, $7, $8, right? Getting much closer to, and we could even expand $2 and $8 to go further. Essentially just saying the further we get away from the mean, the greater the standard deviation. You're deviating from the mean. We got to make sure here in audit sampling that the sample size is sufficient to provide accurate results. Again, I'm going to reiterate this point, this statement. You're going to get sick of it. The sample should be representative of the population. Hey there! Are you ready to not only pass your CPA exams, but truly understand and enjoy the material while studying? I know it seems impossible, right? Especially to enjoy the material. We'll do it together. Tap into the power of CPA.examprep.ai, where we've got personalized quizzes, multiple choice questions, memorization guides, flashcards, simulations, all tailored to your learning. Our adaptive study planning puts you on the fastest path to success and lifts you back up if you fall behind. Avoid wasting your precious time and money attempting an exam with a low chance of passing, because who wants that? We want to get you through this process as quick as possible. Our exam readiness prediction lets you walk in with confidence, knowing that you're prepared for success on exam day. Thankfully, there's no payment method needed to get started, so why don't you come join us? Visit cpa.examprep.ai and let's achieve your exam success together.